Coming up, after a week off to focus on football, we get back to basketball. We get you caught up on all the recent high school hoops headlines from around the region, including some record-breaking girls in North Dakota.
Speaking of North Dakota, we'll get a better read on Bismarck area basketball with help from KFYR TV's Lee Timmerman.
And temps are rising for those looking to complete an undefeated season. Find out which teams Jandy thinks have the best chance of staying perfect in this week's high school hoops forecast.
All that plus previews and picks for some of this week's best matchups. Varsity Sports starts right now.
And how is everybody doing? Alongside Jason Andera, I am Jay Elson. Welcome to another edition of Varsity Sports.
Well, you probably can't believe this, but district play getting ready to get going in North Dakota Girls Class B in less than a week. And for the rest of those classes, they're closing in on those last few games. The quality of play is really starting to trump up right now.
And the level of excitement starting to rise as well. But before we get into what's coming up, let's get you caught up on what's already happened around the region as we take a look at this week's headlines. Maple Valley senior Riley Nudell stands alone on North Dakota's unofficial all-time high school girls basketball scoring list. Nudell eclipsed 3,148 career points during the Raiders' 66-28 win over Hillsborough Central Valley back on January 29th. Meanwhile, Shanley's Sarah Jacobson became the new all-time leading scorer for Class A girls, breaking the old record of 2,120 points in a win over Grand Forks Central. Now, both Nudell and Jacobson, by the way, headed to North Dakota State to play hoops next season.
Hard to comprehend just how big those numbers are from those two ladies. Well, let's move on. Abby Hora of Viborg Hurley went for 28 points on Monday. That got her past the 2,000-point plateau for her career. The senior has helped the Cougars to a 13-2 start this season, and she will move on next year to play at Augustana. Another milestone, meanwhile, the sophomore, Morgan Kepsel, hit the 1,000-point milestone on Monday night when she scored 30 points and grabbed 13 boards to help in a win over West Central. They are now 15-2 on the year.
Congrats to all those young ladies. Quite the accomplishments. North Star had a daunting week ahead of them at this time last week, but they ended up acing it. Bearcats beat two top 5 teams on the road, handing both Park River FL and Rugby their first losses of the season. Macy Quilven paced the offense, scoring 20 and 26 points, respectively.
Well, there were two region leaders who clashed on Tuesday night when Red Cloud visited Rapid City at St. Thomas More's Gym. The Cavs opened up a 10-point lead in the second quarter, but Red Cloud trimmed that to 3 points at halftime and kept it close all night. They also kept the pace high all night, but St. Thomas More's shooting and the Cavaliers ended up winning in the end with the 70-67 victory on Tuesday night. Kobe O'Rourke led all scorers with 24 for Red Cloud, while Preston Arity put in 22 for St. Thomas More.
Finally, high school football standouts all across our region celebrated National Signing Day last week, but not everyone made it official in time to get on our Signing Day special. Brandon Valley All-State linebacker Andrew Sorensen was one of them. He joined Northern State just a few hours too late for us, but that's okay. Sorensen, though, the 11th South Dakota native to join the Wolves in 2016, the all-time leading tackler in Lynx history.
Yeah, he's an important guy to mention. Wasn't able to make that decision right at that time, but we wanted to make sure to recognize him on this show.
All right, well, with boys and girls teams ranked first and second in the state, things are certainly looking up at Bismarck Century. We'll get the pulse on the Patriots and some of the other strong Bismarck area teams from KFYR TV's Lee Timmerman after this.
Varsity Sports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Mitchell Technical Institute, Shields, and Farmers Union Insurance Agency.
And welcome back. Well, there is a lot of good hoops being played in and around Bismarck right now, and it starts with Century High. And for more on the Patriots, we bring in a man who knows that area and that program very well, KFYR TV Sports Director Lee Timmerman. Lee, the Century boys just keep on winning. Talk about this team's success.
They have experience. I think one of the things they have is a willingness to play defense. They're unselfish, and they have a kid named Dalton Feeney. So that's a pretty good combination. You know, at times I think they might rely a little bit too much on Feeney. But if you go back to a game against Mandan where Century was behind, Adam Geiger actually scored 5 points in 3 seconds with less than 6 seconds to go to win by 1, so they definitely have more guys than just Feeney. But anytime you can beat Minot twice, which is not easy to do, you have a good team. And I guess overall with Century, I just like the toughness that they have.
Well, things are awfully good on the girls' side as well. In fact, they haven't lost in-state yet either. Do they feel like they're being overshadowed by Shanley in that big 58-game winning streak?
Well, they may be overlooked, but if they are, it's for a good reason, because Shanley is the team that should be your first thought when you're talking about Class A girls in North Dakota. But if you're talking about the West, Century's far and away the best in the West, and it's not even close. But one of the things that just happened recently that could hurt them a little bit is a very good athlete by the name of Katie Shear is out with a knee injury. So the Patriots will have to play a little bit smaller for the rest of the season, but they have some pretty good depth. But without having Shear, it does change the dynamic of their team a little bit.
Well, there are a lot of good Class B boys teams in your area, Lee. Do any of them stand out as one that could make some noise if they get to the state tournament?
I don't know if there's one team out this way that's head and shoulders better than the rest, but I tell you there's a lot of really, really good teams. Region 3 has 4 teams right now that are either receiving or in the poll or receiving votes. Strasburg-Zeeland has a really solid starting top 5. Brody Newsma is one of the best players in the state, I think. Dan Carr at Linton HMB always has a solid team, so you never want to go against Dan, especially when it comes tournament time. Shiloh Christian has been ranked second. They just keep on winning. One of the things I like about Shiloh is the leadership on that team, especially from Zach Martin, who's been doing it all season long. And then when you head way out west, Region 7 has teams like Beulah and Hettinger Scranton and Trinity, I think, are all in the mix. So to answer your question, I don't think there's one team. I think there's a lot of teams, though, that are really going to make a strong push to get to the B.
Girls Class B, the playoffs are almost set. Of those ranked teams in the western part of North Dakota, who could make a run in the postseason? Maybe a Watford City, a Shiloh, maybe even Rugby?
I think, Jandy, all 3 of those could make a run to state simply because they're not all in the same region. It's unlike the boys. I think it's really spread out. Shiloh Christian, definitely the favorite in Region 5, despite not having, Jay Two Bears, who is Division I commit to Wisconsin-Milwaukee. So imagine what Shiloh would be without her. They've been in some closer games recently, but I still think Shiloh's the team to beat there. Watford City, I think it's just easy. I think a no-brainer in Region 8. And Trinity is probably the pick in Region 7 when it comes to girls. But it's a little bit more spread out, not quite as deep, I don't think, in terms of solid competitive teams as there is on the boys' side of Class B.
Always good to talk to our good friend Lee Timmerman. There's much more to this latest conversation, as a matter of fact. And to listen to that in its entirety, or to just check out what else is going on in high school or college athletics around the Dakotas, go to midcosn.com/podcast. You can also subscribe to that through the iTunes store. All right, well, watches, warnings, planners, oh my. The atmosphere isn't exactly predictable, and neither is the world of high school basketball. Jandy is going to walk us through this week's forecast next.
Varsity Sports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Mitchell Technical Institute, Shields, and Farmers Union Insurance Agency.
And welcome back. Well, the forecast is starting to clear a little bit, but according to our resident hoops meteorologist, Jason Andera, we do have some watches and warnings on the horizon. Is that true, Jason?
Yes, it is true, Jay. Now, first, I don't want to alarm anyone. This is just the first list I'm going to do is just a watch. That means conditions are right for an undefeated season. Doesn't mean there'll be one for sure. We'll get to those warnings much later, which are more serious. But let's take a look at the undefeated watch. We'll start up here in Burleigh County, where we've got 2 teams, the boys and the girls from Century, both undefeated in their class, in state. They have both got losses in Wyoming, but that doesn't count according to this watch. And then we'll move down to the Warner boys. They're in Brown County, undefeated. They still have Langford on the list, so that's why they're still in the watch. Still got a tough game coming up. Castlewood has a couple losses on the season here in Hamlin County, but those are both Class A teams. They've got another big game against a Class A team in Sioux Valley. But in Class B, as far as that goes, in their class, in state, they definitely have a chance to go undefeated. And then down in Minnehaha County, you've got Sioux Falls, Washington, which was tested on Tuesday night, went to overtime against Lincoln, but they're still in that watch. They've got O'Gorman coming up later in the season. It's going to be tough for them to go the whole way. Let's look at the warnings now. Like I said, a little more serious on the warnings. We just had one expire, by the way, in Shannon County, where Red Cloud lost their first game of the year to St. Thomas More on Tuesday night, so they're no longer in the warning. But you see in Pennington County, we've got St. Thomas More, the girls, a couple losses on the season, like I said, but neither of them are in their class. Sully Buttes, now this one's very serious. They've got a pretty easy road all the way the rest of the regular season, the girls that is, to go undefeated. And then, of course, Shanley, 58 wins in a row. It's a pretty safe thing that we've got a warning for an undefeated season coming up in Cass County. And then in Grand Forks County, Thompson, ready to complete an undefeated season with just one more win coming up. So those are pretty much sure things. All right, let's look at the 7-day planner. Some of the best games coming up over the next 7 days. Let's start with the Dickinson and Century. Dickinson, a pretty good chance to win in that one. Dickinson has had some good games coming up, but Century playing some really good ball, especially after their second win in a row over Minot. Then we've got Mount Vernon, Plankinton, and Ethan. Ethan is a team that could surprise Mount Vernon Plankinton. This is at the DWU Classic coming up. The girls on Friday, the boys play on Saturday. So that one looks like 77%. That might be stretching a little bit. They had a tough game against Del Rapids on Tuesday. Let's move to those ESD Classics. Now these, look at these, 52, 53. Really close games in South Dakota coming up. Those ESD battles have been awesome this year. That one could go either way. And then you've got O'Gorman and Lincoln playing. That should be a tough one. And the rest of these on this slate, I mean, 60%, not a huge margin for the favorites on this one. So I expect some really good games coming up later in the week. It's really coming down to it, Jay, where we've got a lot of good games tuning up right before districts and regionals, and I think these teams are playing at their best coming up down the stretch.
What everybody wants this time of year, right?
That's right.
As we get toward that postseason mark. All right, well, folks, I've got some questions, burning questions, and I want answers. How many do you think this guy can provide? We're about to find out. Jandy's going to run the fast break next.
Varsity Sports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Mitchell Technical Institute, Shields, and Farmers Union Insurance Agency.
And welcome back. We are about to pick up the pace here on Varsity Sports. I've got a 5-pack of questions, and it's Jandy's job to answer every one of them in a fast break style.
They don't
no
have to
shot
be right.
clock violation. Yeah, you don't have to be right, but no shot clock violations allowed, right or wrong. So Let's put 35 seconds on the board, and here we go. Up first, Jandy, as you know, the North Dakota girls basketball districts are coming up quickly. Where can we expect to see the most drama?
Well, districts, you're not going to see a ton of drama. The cool thing is that Region 1, 2, and 7 are having those super regionals, so that'll be fun. And as far as that, Region 1 super regional involves Maple Valley. This is a team that really needs to make a run to state, so they're kind of 6th out of that 8 in that Region 1, so that's going to be a little bit tough for them. And then you look a little farther down, and you might see some drama in District 16, where you've got a couple teams right at 500 who are going to be battling out for that last spot, but for the most part, not a ton of drama in the first rounds of these district battles.
Okay, let's focus on individuals now. Who are the best uncommitted players in the Dakotas, North or South Dakota? Okay,
well, let's get started with a couple of seniors. Majak Kerr of Mitchell Christian, a big guy, 6'10", is going to be a really good player. He might have to go the JUCO route. He's got some international things that he has to work with. And then, speaking of big guys, 6'10", Michael Rogers, also a dynamic player, has not committed from Warner. Nate Davis from Watertown, another great player. You look in North Dakota, you got Deshaun Eikens out of Williston, just a sophomore, but this guy's on the list for some big schools in the future. And then Macy Quilvang, a 6'4" player out of North Star, unbelievable talent from North Star. And then Maya Selland, I got to get this in, is one of the top players on ESPN's list in the nation. Just a junior, has a lot of choices to make. Didn't quite make the shot.
Did not quite make it. That's okay. We'll let it go this time. Let's move to South Dakota boys Class AA. No unbeaten teams, 1 loss or even 2 loss teams in the entire class at this point. That's a rarity. But as we head down the stretch, have you seen anything from the contenders that makes you think there is a leader of the pack?
Well, a leader is too strong of a term right now, but there is a little bit of a group that you can see that's getting better at this point. I think O'Gorman's definitely getting better. You look at Huron, had a little shake-up against Harrisburg, but they feel like their defense can take them a long way. Pierre went through a little struggle where they lost 3 games. I don't know if they feel like they're in that mix, but they've still got time to get back in. Washington had a big win on Tuesday night against a good Sioux City East team. Carter Keller hit 7 3-pointers in that game. I think if Washington gets into their groove, their big guys are playing really well, that they could really be a team to watch, but it's still wide open. I think there's still 10 teams available that could do something here.
I agree. Class A, Double A in South Dakota seem to be very close this year. We talked about how maybe Double A as a whole is down. In fact, we've seen several Class A teams beat Double A teams at this point in the season, many more than I've seen in recent years for sure. If you had to pick an overall top 5 in the state of South Dakota, how many of those teams would be Class A?
I think you're right, Jay. I don't remember a year when I would have done an overall top 5 and there would be any Class A teams. But this year, I think you have 2 teams. I think Del Rapids and Sioux Falls Christian, because of those wins against Double A teams, well, Del Rapids hasn't, but they've taken care of Christian twice. And Christian has taken care of 2 big Double A teams. I think they both belong in the top 5 conversation right now. Del Rapids is really good. Ty Hoagland is having an outstanding year. They've been playing a tough schedule, and they've had a couple close games, but they've really taken care of business.
All right. You're doing great. One more to go, and you can see the finish line. If you were Dalton Feeney, and I know you're not, but if you were,
pretty close.
Not a little less athletic. What sport would you play at the college level?
Man, we're talking about a guy who throws a 95-mile-an-hour fastball. Throws a football effortlessly through the air, leads his team from a mediocre season to a championship season on the football field. Basketball's got his team undefeated at this point. So what sport would I play? I think he's probably making a pretty good decision playing baseball.
Yeah.
It's a tough sport to get into because you've got so many levels to get through to get to the majors, but he's got a big contract, just to make it into the minor league systems. So he's got some guaranteed money there if he gets drafted early. I think that's a smart decision on his behalf, and the long-term implications look a little better in baseball.
Go to Missouri. Play baseball.
If he doesn't get drafted by a major league team.
If he doesn't get drafted first, yes. Okay, that's a big if. All right, well, Washington and O'Gorman are going to tangle twice on Tuesday night in Sioux Falls. Boys and girls, we're going to make our picks for those games, as well as a couple of big matchups in North Dakota right after this.
Varsity Sports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Mitchell Technical Institute, Shields, and Farmers Union Insurance Agency.
And welcome back to Varsity Sports. We wrap things up again tonight, as we do every week, with another round of high school hoops pick'em. You know what that means. We go head-to-head, 4 big games. We'll throw in an upset special for good measure. Each game we get right gets a point. If we nail our upset, we get 2.
This used to be my favorite.
Look at the standings.
It used to be my favorite segment.
I'm enjoying it because I know it's not going to last.
Oh,
but
come on
I'm
now.
off to a pretty good start here. I feel okay.
Okay.
Long way to go, though, Jenny. So you can
not that much left to go.
Confident in that much.
But we do get a few bonus points coming up in the state tournament.
Yes.
So I'm looking forward to that.
That does help. You can gain ground quickly. All right, let's get to it. Starting in North Dakota with the boys, Shanley goes to West Fargo.
Shanley's won a few games in a row, a couple impressive wins, but West Fargo is the class of the EDC right now. I really like the point guard play that they've been getting from Habonian Simon. He's been absolutely great. And another player, Ahmed Aiden, has kind of come out of nowhere. We know about, the Fowles and the Storiuses, but these accents to their list have made them really a contender for the state title. I got to go with West Fargo.
West Fargo's riding an 11-game winning streak. The first of those wins, that streak started actually against Shanley, 61-45 on January 5th. I don't see anything that indicates to me that things are going to be different this time. Maybe the game will be a little closer based on the way Shanley's playing, but I like the Packers as well. North Dakota girls now, Legacy has been playing very well. They go to Bismarck.
Well, quietly, one of the best teams in Bismarck. Of course, Century has been overshadowing them a little bit, but this is a team that's been 8-1 since that loss to Bismarck, and that only loss was to Century. They've got a couple really good players. No seniors on this squad. Mercedes Baumgardner and Britta Felland have really picked the pace up. Felland has been, a double-double machine for them, and I think they're hitting their stride at the right time. I think they're a better team than Bismarck right now. I'm going to take Legacy.
I don't necessarily disagree that they're a better team right now than Bismarck, but there's something working against them a little bit. This will be their 3rd game in 7 days. Now, Bismarck's lost 3 straight coming in, but they're going to have a full week to get ready for this one. The fact that they're going to be rested, I think that says something. I'm actually going to take the Demons in this one,
All
so
right.
we differ there. South Dakota boys now, Washington at O'Gorman. These are always fun. O'Gorman just played another rivalry game on Tuesday night against Roosevelt.
Yeah, and they played great defense in that game. In fact, their defense has been getting better and better. Their last 3 games have allowed less than 50 points. Washington, on the other hand, I think they're ramping up their offense at the right time. This is going to be a very close game. I'm going to take the road team here. I think the Warriors look like the best team in the state to me right now, even though O'Gorman has been playing really solid over the last couple weeks.
You remember just a few weeks ago when we weren't sure what to make of AA at all?
We still don't.
It seems like we don't, but I think the cream is starting to rise. I mean, you mentioned Washington. They're playing much better. They certainly do look like one of the, if not the best team in the state right now. O'Gorman at times has certainly looked that way as well. I like the Knights being at home in this one. They did beat Washington in the first matchup. I don't know that matters a whole lot based on the way the two teams are playing right now, but I like the Knights in there, Jim. South Dakota girls, same matchup. Sioux Falls, Washington at O'Gorman.
Well, and O'Gorman went through a little stretch there where they really struggled to put up some offense. Looked a little better last week, and I think they're ready for Washington the second time around. Washington, on the other hand, they're one of the most consistent teams in all of Class AA. Keep winning, even though they struggled through a poor shooting night on Tuesday night. Came and found a way to win that game in the end, and I think they're going to find the way to win the game again against a really tough defense in O'Gorman.
O'Gorman's defense is what was carrying them earlier in the season, but over the last couple of weeks, you've seen that the point totals for the opponents start to go up.
Yep.
And their offense, do they have enough to compensate if they get into any kind of a track meet at all? I don't think they do, and Washington is awfully good. I think they get the sweep. Finally, our upset picks of the week.
The Mandan boys have had a couple close calls against some really good teams. I think they maybe get that first big win against an elite top 5 type team over Dickinson. I think I'm going to take Mandan.
Okay, I like Aberdeen Roncalli. The Cavaliers, 10-5 on the year. Not the record that we've become accustomed to seeing out of this program over the last few years, but 3 of those losses, St. Thomas More, Washington, O'Gorman. They're playing a tough Clark Willow Lake team who's very, very good at 13-2 coming in. But the game's in Aberdeen. I like the way things are rolling right now for the Cavs. Give me that as my upset pick of the week.